Hello and welcome to Anime Memories, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about Welcome to the N.H.K. This was one of the first series I saw when I discovered that fansubbing exists, and I thought it was okay, but I had no desire to watch it again. Shortly after, I decided to see what everyone else thought of it, so I looked at reviews, I scoured forums, and to my surprise, the reception it got was overwhelmingly positive, with some people even regarding it as a classic. With all the buzz around this show, I thought there must have been something that I missed, so I'd always planned to rewatch it, however, I just kept putting it off. That is, until today. I got the DVDs for 20 bucks on Amazon, so I'm finally going to be able to see if I was right the first time, or if this is a true gem that I didn't fully appreciate for whatever reason. So, let's get into it. Sato is a hikikomori, which is a person that stays in the room all day and never goes outside. He blames his current living situation on a supposed secret organisation called the N.H.K, who are apparently trying to keep him as a hikikomori forever. In reality though, the N.H.K is an excuse to cover up for his crippling social anxiety and his schizophrenia-like mental state. He has no real intention of changing or getting help, however, a girl named Misaki comes along and offers her help anyway. She comes up with a contract which acts as a starting point of her treatment program, and if he breaks that contract, he will incur a fine of 1 million yen. I don't remember a whole lot about my first viewing of this, however, one thing I do remember is that I was laughing fairly often, and on the second time around, it's only gotten funnier. Mental illness may not seem like the kind of topic that you can joke about, but this anime does it exceptionally well. To take a line from the Nostalgia Critic, all comedy is based on some form of misery, whether it be making fun of a particular group of people, laughing at somebody who got hurt, or taking a humorous view of something controversial. The comedy here is all based around Sato's misery, as he's constantly screwing up in social situations. He gets so nervous that he can barely talk, he gets caught lying fairly often, and during the few times when he does step outside, he becomes paranoid that people are making fun of him and labelling him as a weirdo. He's never able to catch a break, and honestly, with some of the crap he does, he doesn't deserve a break. The humour works here because Sato is an extremely flawed person. He sometimes deserves to get smacked around because a lot of the time, he's either doing something stupid or being an asshole. Although, if the show was always lighthearted and spent the entire runtime poking fun at Sato's failures, I don't think it would be as revered as it is. What makes Welcome to the N.H.K so special is that it knows when to dial it back and address the seriousness of the situation. When it needs to talk about suicide, depression, or physical abuse, it's able to change the tone from funny to somber, and it does this almost flawlessly. This means that along with the well-done comedy, there's also a ton of great drama. In terms of the balance between the two, I would say that it's slightly more slanted towards the drama with about a 60-40 split, so the series is pretty well rounded in that way. It should appeal to fans of both genres. Now, with an anime like this that covers controversial topics, the creator's opinions are bound to filter into the story. For the most part, I enjoyed seeing this writer's take on things, but there were two instances where I strongly disagreed. The first was when suicide came up. It started off with characters saying, "You can't commit suicide, think of your family and friends. They'd miss you if you were gone." I think that is a completely fair comment. But then they continued, "If you killed yourself without telling anybody, not only does that make you a coward, but the police would have to look for you, the community would have to create search parties, local businesses would have to answer questions about whether or not they've seen you. So many innocent people would have to waste their precious time because you couldn't man up and face life. What did you ever think about that, huh? You selfish piece of shit?" While the intentions are good, I don't think guilt-tripping somebody out of suicide is going to be effective. They're already feeling bad enough as it is. You're just going to make them feel worse. The second disagreement I have is in regards to the hikikomori lifestyle. With some of the events that happen in here, it seems like the creator thinks that in order to deal with the hikikomori, all you have to do is cut them off when they no longer have access to food or money. Their survival instincts will kick in and they'll have no choice but to buck up, go find a job, and become productive members of society. Bullshit! You can't help somebody with severe mental problems by throwing them in the deep end of the pool. They'll drown immediately. You have to start them off with smaller goals, like going for a walk in the park a few times a week, and then you'll work your way up until they're able to live a normal life again. Although regardless of all that, I'm still glad that this anime brought more awareness to these issues, and I'm sure that many lives were improved because of it. Now, as I mentioned before, Sato has numerous personality problems which often causes friction between him and the other characters. Even with all his flaws though, even with the fact that he basically put himself in this situation, even though he deserves to be called out for being a dickhead, I still found myself feeling sorry for him. I wanted him to pull himself out of it because no one should suffer the way he does. No one should have to deal with the loneliness, anxiety, and sense of failure that he struggles with on a daily basis. Although my desire to see him succeed also caused me to feel a lot of frustration whenever I saw him fall flat on his face and take 2 steps backwards. He initially looks hopeless, with his progress seeming non-existent in the first few episodes, since his antisocial and fearful behaviours were as strong as they were at the start, if not stronger. However, as I continued watching, I realised that he was going out more, he was visiting more public places, and he was gradually becoming more confident while doing so. The reason why he appeared to be getting more abrasive is that he was taking a lot more risks. He was putting himself in more situations where he could potentially start freaking out and yelling at people. While he may at times revert back to his old ways, what's admirable about him is that he never completely gives up. He's always willing to get back on the horse. Although he often needs the encouragement of others in order to do that. And the main person who's encouraging Sato on his journey is his heavily underqualified counsellor Misaki. She is freaking adorable. She's trying so hard to help Sato overcome his broken mental state with absolutely zero experience in the mental health sector, and she's doing it for seemingly no reward. Although when Sato starts asking questions about how she chose him or why she chose him, something doesn't add up. You start getting the feeling that there's something other than kindness that's motivating her. The mystery around her was really intriguing, and when I found out a little bit more about her motivations, it only made me even more intrigued. Misaki was the most endearing character in the show by a significant margin. Whenever Sato was making me feel agitated or sad, I could always trust that her wide-eyed innocence would cheer me up. Now, along with the 2 leads, there are a few supporting characters that further add to an already strong cast. There's Sato's best friend Yamazaki, who's an otaku that's filled to the brim with anger, as well as Sato's former senpai Hitomi, who abuses prescription medication in order to get through the day. They were really interesting inclusions, and I can see them being the starting point for intellectual discussions on how to deal with these issues in real life, and I believe that's what the creator intended. He made a cast full of very screwed up people so that the audience could see themselves in these characters and be motivated to change themselves for the better. When it comes to the visuals, I'd say that about 95% of the artwork is acceptable. It's held up decently well, and the animation, while being slightly choppy, was good enough, especially considering that this came out in the mid-2000s. I'll even praise it a bit for the excellent imagery it has during the scenes where Sato's mind is running wild. So you might be wondering, what about the other 5%? Well, feast your eyes on this monstrosity. While I may technically be a reviewer, I'm not super analytical, and I don't usually notice the occasional dip in video quality. However, about halfway through episode 4, I was baffled at how ugly it became. It made me question what I'd already seen. I started wondering if it had always been this bad, so I went back, checked it out, and everything before this was fine. So what the hell happened? I'm a big advocate of substance over style. I believe that a great story can easily make up for subpar visuals. But even the most amazing story couldn't save this fucking garbage. Thank God these moments were only a very small portion of the show, because if the whole series had a look like this, I don't think I would have made it through. So, the final thing to talk about is the music, and being that the tone is constantly shifting between goofy and serious, The soundtrack contains a reasonable variety of genres. There's some upbeat jazzy rock, some cheesy pop, and a few psychedelic tracks for the crazy, more out there parts. The songs that I enjoy the most though, and I never thought I'd be saying this, were from the blues genre. I've traditionally found blues to be fairly dull, but in those moments where Sato was just laying there, reflecting on what he's become, the slow, relaxing sounds of an acoustic guitar accompanied by a harmonica were an ideal fit. There's a lot of negativity in Welcome to the N.H.K, and when the story is at its lowest, darkest point, it delivers a very inspiring message. Regardless of what horrors you might face, you have to and are able to push on with life. The whole reason why these characters went through hell was so that the viewer could see that they can do the exact same thing. They can go through hell and come out the other end a stronger person. So, to answer my question from the beginning of the review, was I right the first time? Is this anime just okay? No, I was completely wrong. This anime is a classic. It covers severe problems with society in a sincere manner that's bound to get people talking, while also providing some light-hearted fun. This gets my highest recommendation outside of the incredibly cheap DVDs. Again, only 20 bucks right here. You can also find it over on Funimation's website if you live in the US, but I think you need a subscription to watch past episode 4, so that's a bit of a pity, but it's a 10-year-old show. I'm just glad that there's any legal streaming option for it. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment, and if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.